What up, everybody? This is Chris Roscoe, and I have something very special today because I've been doing all this stuff about the intersection between mental health and politics, and a big part of that is how to talk to people that you don't agree with in a way that could be constructive and helpful for everybody. The thing I noticed is that everybody's really fucking bad at it. So I'm lucky enough to have a friend, my friend Holland over here, who is well, actually, why don't you tell a little bit about what you do? You'd be better at it than me.
Sure. So I'm the director of the speech and debate team at California State University, Los Angeles. So basically what my job is I help undergrad students. We go to tournaments every weekend, and we either give speeches or we debate on different topics throughout the whole year. And we go to nationals at the end of the year, and we win trophies. And more importantly, though, we teach students how to critically think, how to argue, how to debate, how to construct arguments, things like that.
That's so amazing. I remember you were into this when we worked together like years ago.
So when we worked together, I was a competitor, and then once you get out of your undergrad, you can get into the coaching aspect. So yeah, that's so funny that when we worked together, I was a competitor.
Yeah, and at the time I was like, oh, that's really cool. You're into debate, like awesome. And then the whole world went nuts, and I started to realize how important what you were doing was. And I really did it. So I'm curious, like, what got you into it way back then?
So I have actually, when I competed, I was actually more on the speech side. Okay. I didn't actually do the debate side, but now that I'm a coach, I teach it and I judge it. I'm going to teach my argumentation class in an hour. So, but when I was a competitor, I actually did more of like the persuasion info kinds of speech.
Oh, cool.
And I got into it I went to Saddleback Community College, and one of the classes you have to take is a speech class. And they thought I was kind of good at it, and I just kind of got looped in. And 10 years later, I haven't stopped doing it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I'm really, really grateful that you decided to take the time out to talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me. I think this is an important conversation to have.
I think too. I think so too. You know, I see people trying to debate in the best way they possibly can, but there is just these little underlying rules and things that people don't know what to look out for that can.
So many rules.
Yeah. And if you don't look out for them, a conversation can go sideways so quick.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what the hell happened.
Yeah.
So my intention is to go over some of the just basic fundamentals. So people that are interested in actually having constructive debates instead of just, Facebook arguments can kind of self-direct and get an idea of what to look out for and how to at least hold their own integrity so that they're doing what they can feel is right.
Totally.
Okay, cool. So to be honest, I don't really know what to ask, but I'm curious what some of the major ground rules are. Like what's the basic fundamental premise?
Yeah. So first, I think that most people have such a odd and misinterpreted understanding of debate is because their only understanding is like presidential debates. And I don't even consider those debates. I think that those are two people yelling at each other. And I think that when that's all you know, it's very hard to understand what debate actually is. There are different types of debate, even in the competitive aspect. In the competitive world, there's different types. So you have something like Lincoln Douglas, where you have one topic that you're debating all year. I'm trying to remember what ours is this year. It's something on cyber bullying, cyber law, something like that. But it's a topic that you research and you build your argument all year round. Then you have policy debate, where you're debating with a partner. And then you have IPDA, which I think is the most introductory level. And I think that if people want to start somewhere, they should start with IPDA debate. So basically, you get a topic. They can be topics that are basic, like pro football is better than college football, or you can get really intense topics like the last the last one I judged was the United States should get rid of low-grade nuclear weapons. And you have a pro side and a neg side, and basically you go back and forth, holding up your end of the argument. There's like different times that each person is allowed to talk, different rules that they have to abide by, and if you break those rules, you get called out on them.
Nice. So what are some of those rules?
Okay, cool. So if you start, the AF always starts first, okay? Then they have, so this is only IPDA debate.
Okay.
So you have the AF starts first, and what they have to do, the first thing that they have to do is define the terms. So what are we even talking about? So let's say that the topic that we're talking about is Michelle Obama should run in 2020. Okay, well, what does that actually mean, right? Like, you could define that as she should run for governor, she should run for vice president, she should run, take a run around the block. Like, what does it actually mean?
Okay, yeah.
So that's the first thing you have to do, is define your terms. Then you have to tell me, is this a fact, a value, or a policy? Like, are we arguing the value that Michelle Obama would have in the presidency? Are we arguing the fact that she will run? Or are we saying that she should run? Because if I'm talking about facts and you're talking about value, we're having two different debates.
That right there is huge.
Yeah. So before you even argue about what you're arguing about, we have to decide what the words mean, and we have to decide what type of debate we're having. So usually you can tell if it's a policy round, is if the word should is in it. So Michelle Obama should run for president. That means she's not running right now, and we want a policy change. Value would be more like strawberry ice cream is the best ice cream. Well, now we're placing a value on strawberry ice cream.
Or in the Michelle Obama thing, it would be Michelle Obama would be the best president.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. And then a fact would be like the earth is round, and you're arguing that it's round or not.
Oh, okay. Oh, so in that case, it would be she's going to win, and then you argue whether or not she's going to win, and that's the fun thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what are some of the pitfalls that you see people commonly falling into when it comes to either trying to stay to the rules or navigate an argument? Like, where do people mess up the most?
So there's two different things that I see people kind of struggle with. The first one is topicality, like when you define those terms, you have to stay topical. And what that means, like, for example, if it was Michelle Obama should run in 2020, and I was AF, and I said she should run away from Barack Obama, and I'm defining it as she's getting out of that relationship and running away. That's fundamentally unfair for you, because in your prep time, you would have in no way prepped about their relationship. So you would run a counter on me, and you would say, it's called a T for topicality, so you would call a T on me. And then the debate starts getting on to whether it was a T or not. Another interesting thing that people run are Ks, critiques. So let's say you and I were having a debate, and I might say I'm running a K because this debate is fundamentally flawed, because we in this world are on two different levels of privilege, and it's unfair for me to have to debate you when we already don't share the same privilege in the outside world. So before we can even have this debate, we have to change our whole communication.
What do you do?
So I think, sorry?
So what do you do when that happens?
So the debate kind of changes to, is it a K or not? Like, can we actually have this debate, or can we not?
Wow, what would be wow, that's fascinating. What would be some instances where you actually can't have the debate?
So a couple of years ago, in the podcast that I sent you, there was this guy. He was a Black gay male, and he won nationals because he ran a case saying this is fundamentally flawed for me to have to give this debate when I already like me speaking doesn't hold the same amount of value that my opponents do.
And so it's an auto win?
No, it's not an auto win. The judge decides whether they agree, whether they've held up their arguments well, because the other team the whole time is saying that it is fair, we need to solve these problems, and you go back and forth the whole time. At the end of the day, the judge decides who they vote for and why.
So this is huge, actually, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, is because I personally, like, you know, people like think I'm a straight white guy, and so they're like, hey, you don't matter. You don't get to talk about this stuff. And in my head, it's like, well, but I thought ideas were ideas, and we can bring them to the marketplace and see where they. But if this isn't part of an institution, it sounds like there might be a little bit more to it than I originally assumed. Like, how do you have any idea how to decide if whether or not a debate can even happen? Like, do you know how to distinguish those grounds?
So Ks don't get run all the time. They don't get run a lot. I think they kind of went through a phase, like in most things, debates kind of ebb and flow with different changes, right? Like sometimes one year something's popular. So I haven't really seen very many Ks, okay. But they do happen, and I find them very interesting. And yeah. I don't think I have an answer for like how to solve these problems. Sure. But I do believe that when you have two groups and one has more privilege and priority within our society, that there's a fundamental flaw when you put those two people up against each other and have them have an equal and fair debate.
Yeah, I guess that is fair, because there's a certain form or a certain way that people are going to be listening to the debate, and that's going to be informed by their presuppositions, and it's going to hold weight depending on that. That is endlessly fascinating.
And I mean, you think about like stereotypes, like in debate, you have to stick up for yourself and you have to argue and be firm. And as a woman, those ideals aren't looked upon as good. So a lot of times, you don't get very many female debaters because they don't want to be called a bitch all the time when they're debating and doing the exact same thing that their male opponents are doing, but they're getting called out for it. And so if you have a female team and a male team, and that female team doesn't feel like they can speak on the same grounds that their male opponents can, is that debate fair?
Wow, and that's amazing. Wow, that's a curveball I wasn't expecting. That just is so fascinating.
Yeah.
That is a thing. And it must be an ongoing, complicated process to decipher when you're dealing with one of those and when you're not.
Yeah, it definitely is. And even just like in practice, teaching women to speak their mind, like it takes longer. So it takes, because they're not used to being able to have, 5-6 minutes where everyone is listening to them, yeah. Right? Where some people walk in and they're used to it. So it's sometimes a lot of judging and coaching takes place outside of that realm of debate, because you have so many other factors and aspects that come into it.
Wow. I mean, that's really cool that you have judges that can figure that out for you, because I think most people in day-to-day life, if they were to run into a situation like that, it seems like an impasse. Like one
so the judges at these tournaments, the judges are the coaches. So I am a judge for like another school, and another school's DOF will judge my students. So we all kind of know each other and coach and help. It's a community.
Okay. So does it ever get used as a cop-out?
Yes.
It does? Okay. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the most interesting thing I think I've learned so far, is that because it's all perceptual. Like you can't really measure it. You can't, if you could measure it, one measure wouldn't carry over to the next debate or the next people watching it. So you really just have to kind of go moment by moment and filter. And you've actually had to figure that out. Like, since you were a judge, have you had to be in that position?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I've been doing this for a while.
Okay, so nothing big enough to stand out.
Nothing big enough that I can specifically remember.
Okay, cool. All right. So just to back up and catch up with what we were talking about. So first there was a T, which is when somebody kind of goes off topic and starts kind of talking about something that the other person wasn't able to.
It's defining the terms in a tricky way
Mm,
that made it so before the debate starts you have prep time, so you're given the proposition, Hillary Clinton or Michelle Obama, someone should run in 2020, and then you're given like 20-30 minutes and you are getting all your research, you're prepping.
mm.
Well, if your prop was uh, Michelle Obama should run in 2020, what would you automatically start researching? You would start researching running for president, probably. Like that's where you would probably go to, or running for some kind of office. Your mind wouldn't go to running out of a relationship.
No.
And if I defined it that way as running out of a relationship, you could call a T on me because I defined those terms in a very specific and kind of tricky way that made it unfair for you.
Mm. Okay. So defining terms is really essential.
Defining terms is really important because my definition for things and your definition for things could be so fundamentally different.
Yeah.
I mean, usually in a debate, they define like words by like, what does sadness mean? Or what does to like something mean?
Yeah. Wow.
You would have to define, you really have to define every word. What does the United States mean? Are we talking about one state? Are we talking about our community of all states? Are we talking about the government? So you can take these words and have them mean so many different things.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's actually a lot that goes on nowadays where people don't want to defer, or they don't want to define their terms.
Or they think that you automatically have the same definition as somebody else.
Yeah, that's something I run into a lot, is especially with a friend of mine, Issa, who we actually agree with her just about everything. But the only time I end up fighting with her is when we think a word means something different and we're having two different conversations. So that's a huge one. So, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So what are some of the other things to look out for?
So then it's really what the debate gets into is you have different, they're called cases, different points that you're making that support your idea. So Michelle Obama should run for president in 2020 because she has experience in the White House. She has her like get up and move campaign, and lots of people like her. So those are my 3 points. So those are my 3 points that I have to argue for the rest of the debate. Or if I have 5, I argue those 3 points. And I think what a lot of people do is they have their 3 main points and then they just kind of go wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
And you have to stick to your fundamental points. And then you as the app will have your 3 to 5 or however many points that you stick to. And basically what the rest of the debate is me supporting my points and disproving yours, and then you proving your points and disproving mine. And then once you get to the end of the debate, you're not allowed to add any more points. It's called a point of order if you do. So if I have those 3 points and then all of a sudden I also add that she's really great with kids, you would call a point of order on me because you had no time to argue against that for the whole debate, and I just added it in last minute.
Oh, okay. Wow, that really clarifies things a lot. It's like no wonder nobody's communicating.
Right.
Like none of this is happening anywhere.
Right. So when you have a debate or any type of argument, really, these things can be applied. You have to know what the words mean. You have to make sure that you know which points you're arguing, and that you know which points your opponent is arguing, and that you stick to those main cases.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so what would be one of the things to look out for from an opponent? Like something that they might do to knock you off your guard or whatever? Like what are some...
So yeah, in these debates, there's things called either flex time or cross-X, and that's a point, it's about 1 to 2 minutes where you get to ask me any questions you want, and I get to ask you any questions I want. And those can be really tricky because you have no idea what your opponent's going to ask, and they can be very difficult questions. So I think the biggest thing to look out for is during that flex time, like what types of questions are you going to ask me? And really just, I think the best thing to do is when you're prepping your case, you're also looking into what points your opponent might be making as well, to be aware of what the other side is also researching. Because if you only research your side, then you only know your points.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which is, I think what a lot of people, I think that's got to be the most common thing I see is, because like I said, I'm looking at a lot of this from a political point of view and trying to bring people together. And what I see is like half the story here, half the story here. They don't know anything about the other version's story of it. They're just assuming that they're right and the other person is wrong. And they refuse to mesh, and they share each other's blind spots. And I think it's due to exactly what you're talking about, is not actually knowing the opponent's points well enough to actually combat them for what they're worth, but instead they have to go after them in some kind of other way, like what you call a T, like going off on some other complete tangent that the other person wasn't prepared for.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, probably the number one thing I'd like to encourage people to do, is to get to know the opposing side a little bit better. If only so that you could support your side more, like even just to prove that you are right. Like that is, I think, a monumental shift in values in our culture that I think could change so much, just to be informed. Because once I started doing that, I started changing my mind about all kinds of stuff. And seeing good where I used to see bad, and seeing bad where I used to see good. And it's just made my world so much more clear, and I would love to see people do that. And
absolutely. As a judge, it's so fascinating to sit there because you're listening to one side give their speech and you're like, oh man, they're winning. Like that was good. And then the second later, you're listening to the other side and you're like, wow, that was really good. They're winning. It changes like that because when you listen to different sides, it's so easy to be persuaded, especially when really good arguments are made.
And I think that's terrifying for people.
Yeah.
The fact that they could potentially be swayed. And like, holy crap, I got to rethink my identity. I got to rethink my family and my friends. And like, oh, what am I going to do if I get persuaded into anything? And I think it's horrifying for people. And I'd love to see that. Okay. So actually what I'm curious about now is, how do you tell when somebody wins?
So I tell how someone wins by a couple things. So one, did they support all of their main cases? Did they, what it's called, if you drop a case, it means that you didn't support your opponent. You didn't ever like combat their argument. So if you gave me 3 points about why you're right and I only talked about 2, I dropped your case. So that's one of the things I vote on. Did the side uphold all 3 of their points? I say 3 because it's just an easy number to work with. There might be more.
And it also sounds like you're saying, like, did someone skirt the issue? Like, did they have really good responses for A and B, but didn't have shit to say about C, so they just left it alone?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So did you support all 3 of your points, and then did you also counter all of your opponent's points? Or could you only come up with an argument for one? That's one of the reasons. And then depending on what the topic actually is, a lot of times it comes down to maybe like life. So like, for example, the one about nuclear weapons. A lot of times opponents will say, like, you should vote on this, or this is what the debate is about. The debate is about saving people's lives. Will getting rid of these nuclear weapons save lives, or will it not? And that's what you're voting on. And I say, okay, that's what I'm voting on. So I'm going to vote for the team who I think has value of life. Is there a team that upholds that better? And then I would vote for that side.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like ethics are a part of this as well. Like, if you don't hold to the ethics, then you lose.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I would love to see a shift in culture where ethics fucking matter, and if you don't hold on to them, then you're the one who's considered lost. Like, I forget what they call it, but there's some kind of thing where it's like the first person to throw an insult is the one who loses. Like, no matter how well put together their point is, but as soon as you throw the ethics out the window, you're the one who lost. And I would love to see some kind of movement in that direction. And it's really cool to know that this is what's happening in colleges. Like, I had no idea what college debate.
Yeah, it's really awesome. So the students that I work with and the students over the country who usually compete in forensics, they end up becoming teachers, lawyers, activists. So it's really exciting to see a community of people who, again, know how to break down arguments, know how to critically think, know how to read, research, and know whether it's real or not, whether it's fake news or legit, and like what research actually means. I think a lot of times, especially now, you can get bummed out by society pretty quickly. And coming here to my office every day and like seeing people actually do research, and it gives you a little bit of hope. It's pretty exciting.
Goosebumps hearing you talk about it. It's like really exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So I want to know, so like someone like me, I have opinions. I want to get them out in the world. I want to bring people together. What would you tell me would be the best piece of advice so that I can be prepared to bring my ideas into the world well, knowing that there's going to be a bunch of people that want to tear them apart? How can I best arm myself?
My initial thought is to stay off social media. I don't think that posting things online is helpful in any type of way.
Okay.
I think that to get good research and good critical thought out there, man, that's a tough question. I think you need to find your pocket, your little niche, and start small and grow up from there. I don't think just, posting things to the ether does much, because it's just going to get spewed and ridiculed. I think that you start small and you grow and you learn. And I think it's easy for me when you have a job that's in it all the time. And I think maybe just trying to find what your niche is and making that a better place. Trying to tackle the whole world is just too much. And I think just changing your little community and your niche is, and then again, growing from there is a really good start.
I completely agree. I love that. And that's actually what I'm doing. So that's really...
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing.
So here's something I'm curious about is, what are some changes in temperament that you've had to go through in order to become a better debater? Because I think that's one of the biggest thing that gets in people's way. So what personal changes have you had?
Totally. So temperament is huge. And I think that it's very different depending on who you are as a person. I think it's starting to change, but for a long time you would have female debaters that were told, like, you need to be nicer, you need to calm down, don't raise your voice. And we're still seeing the implications of that, because there aren't very many female debaters, because we're told not to put up a fight and speak our minds. And when we do, we're told that it's unladylike. So that's a huge thing. Sorry?
Do you still get that?
Not so much anymore, but yeah, totally.
Sorry to hear that.
I think that it's interesting in debate because there is such a culture of respect that most people don't see and don't know about. Like, again, when you see presidential debates where people are interrupting each other and yelling at each other and calling each other names, like, that doesn't happen in this community. People shake hands in the beginning. Their very first speech is always, "Thank you so much for being here. I hope for a wonderful debate." We shake hands at the end.
It's so cool.
Yeah, so in IPDA, the beginner's debate, the judge actually judges you on courtesy, on your tone. So yes, there is debate and you're arguing, but it's possible to do it in a very respectful way.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, sometimes you might get a little heated because you care about the things that you're talking about, but the idea that debate is two people just yelling and screaming at each other is not the reality of debate that I know.
That's so good to hear. That really
Yeah.
is. Because trying to carve a pocket out in the world where people can do that is tremendously difficult. It's
Yeah.
taken me like 4 years to get like even just like a few hundred people that are willing to do it. Like it's very difficult, and so I'm really glad to know that those are the values. And
Yeah.
tone is one thing I've specifically taken a lot of crap for trying to manage in the debates that I've instigated. Is if people get upset and start calling names and yelling and freaking out, then I'll try to bring the tone down, and then somebody would pull some. I don't know if this is what you would consider a K or not, but it's something along the lines of like, I'm so outraged because of my experiences that I should be allowed to speak this way. And me over here, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. That doesn't seem to work. That seems like it's just going to hurt everybody. And so to know that these things are valued and that they are important cornerstones of being able to actually reach a more accurate version of truth it's exciting and it's really comforting.
Yeah, I don't remember the last debate that I judged that had, cussing or name calling. I mean, it just doesn't happen because there's a level of respect and there's, it shouldn't be surprising. It is surprising that people can contain themselves and be human beings, and that shouldn't be shocking. Like,
Yeah.
But it is. And, you can be in debate from elementary school to college. So, I have students who've been doing this for years and years and years and years and years. And that type of aggressiveness. I mean, there is some aggression because debate, you get into it. But I know what you're talking about because there is so much of that. That's the kind of perception debate has. But if you ever went to a competition and watched the debaters, again, their first words are "Thank you so much for being here." Handshake in the beginning and the end. What?
That actually makes me want to go see that.
Yeah, well, they're almost every weekend.
Really?
Yeah, I can send you info. I'm going to one Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Cool. And you're in LA, right?
Yeah.
Rad. I just moved to LA, so that's perfect. I would love to go see something like this. Just see it modeled and see other people doing this. Like I imagine it's so inspiring.
Friday and Saturday, I'll be judging debate.
Cool. Yeah, please.
And maybe Sunday, I'm sure.
Yeah, tell me all about it. I'd love to come and see it. I don't have any plans on Saturday. I might actually come out and do that because that would be so
cool.
Interesting to see.
I'll send you the info.
Okay, cool. So I want to give you plenty of time to prep for your class, but I have one last question.
Sure.
So for people who want to arm themselves to go out into the world and be in the marketplace of ideas, what kind of research advice would you give them? How can they know that they're fully armed going out into the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if you can ever be fully armed. There's so much to know about so many things, and I like to think that I'm well versed in a lot of areas, and then you talk to someone who knows more than you. There's always going to be someone who knows more, and I think that knowing that and coming in with some humility is really important. If you already think that you know the most, then you probably know the least. So I think knowing that you're never going to ever know the full amount of information. I also think that talking to people that actually experience the things that you're researching. If you're researching it, that means that you're on a computer reading articles or listening to a podcast, right? You're not the person who's experiencing it into the day-to-day. And I think that if you really want to know things, you need to talk to people who live those experiences every single day. That's the best research that you're ever going to find, is talking to people and letting them tell you their stories. There's only so much that you're going to get from reading an article from the safety of your house, right? So
phone or anything, like no facial expressions.
Yeah, exactly. And getting the words straight from the source, I think, is so important. And then the next thing is, when you do research, peer-reviewed research is really important. So somebody who's read it and gone through it and has okayed it. and just being a critical thinker. And if one source says something and that's the only time that you ever see that information posted and no one else like corroborates that story, maybe you need to do a little bit more digging. And when an article is posted, just reading the title isn't good enough. You got to actually read the whole article. And trusting to an extent, and knowing that every bit of information is from someone's perspective, right? And that's why, again, I think it's so important to get stuff from the source. That you are like, if you're advocating for like sex workers' rights, like don't just assume that you know the answers. Go talk to someone in that field. They'll know the answers.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important.
That's great advice, actually, because I don't think a lot of people do that.
So my kind of motto in life is never speak for people who can speak for themselves. Like you always say, like, speak for the voiceless. Everyone has a voice. You shouldn't be speaking for anyone. You should be passing the mic so that they have the opportunity to speak. I don't agree with speaking for other people. There's no one who can't speak for themselves. There's people who don't get the opportunity to. So if you're doing research over on a certain topic, you should be talking to those people who live that experience.
Damn, well, that's really badass. I'm so glad you're doing this. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm really glad we did this. I'm inspired, and this is really beneficial, I think. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And I will send you the info for the debates. And anyone who's listening, we love audience members. As big as this community is, we're still pretty small, and sometimes these amazing ideas are just being told to a judge, and that's the only person that gets to hear these amazing arguments. And I think that one thing that forensics and speech and debate could gain is having a wider audience and people who can take these ideas and spread them out so that it's not just this community who listens to them. So if anyone is interested in learning more and watching some stuff, I would be super interested in passing that information on.
Cool. Well, yeah, pass it to me and I'll post it in the thing that I post, because I'm definitely going to start going to these things, because I keep getting goosebumps. I'm like really hyped on it. And cool. I'm going to try and build a community of people that are also into it. So yes, absolutely. Whatever information you have, I will absolutely pass on.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much and good luck with your class.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.